Firstly, can I say that the IntelliBus trial, which I'll soon talk to, is the product of a lot of great work, both within the RAC, but also with some fantastic partners, the Department of Transport, the State Government, the City of South Perth. But whilst we've all contributed, probably Anne Still and her team within the RAC deserve a lot of praise for the work they've done, and obviously we've also partnered with Navia, the French company that provided the shuttle bus. So what do we want to do? Well, obviously at the RAC we want to reduce the number of road deaths and serious injuries, and that's really important today. I'm wearing a yellow ribbon. For those who don't know, today, this week is United Nations Road Safety Week, Global Road Safety Week. It's all about slowing down. So the beauty of autonomous vehicles, eventually 90% of all car crashes will be reduced, because 90% of car crashes currently are caused by human error. That's a huge prize, something worth really striving for, and that's really a key motivator for us at the RAC on behalf of our members. Second one, we want WA to have a world-class commuting network. We want to keep the costs of motoring and mobility down, and we also want to reduce the effect on our environment of private vehicles and freight vehicles, etc., travelling on our roads. This next video, well, I'll shut up and you can watch.
Since the beginning, we have pushed and pulled, tried and tested, fulfilled some innate desire to keep moving forward, to carry goods or each other, to cover distances, discover new places and people, to share ideas. And with ideas comes the new, steam power, and then self-propulsion. We tried and experimented, we failed and fell, but that didn't stop us from moving forward, from pedal power to horsepower. With the internal combustion engine, we took a mighty leap. We reached for the skies and literally took off. And the sky was not the limit. By daring to dream, we changed everything. We reached for the stars and went beyond what was possible. And everyone watched. We would never be the same. Transport would never be the same. We'd made the impossible possible. Small steps taking giant leaps. So, where next? Electric cars for all. Driverless vehicles. Introducing RAC IntelliBus, a 100% electric, 100% driverless shuttle. And in an Australian first, we're testing it right here in Western Australia. See the tests and find out where automated transport could take us. One thing is guaranteed, we will keep testing the limits of what's possible, and we will keep moving forward.
The purpose of that video really was to say that transport modes have been evolving over time. Automation is a further step to that. So, you know, that we have made all those improvements, we sometimes forget about them. Prior to our trial, we were really keen to understand what the community understood and thought about autonomous vehicles, and it was very interesting. So 46% of the public basically have a very positive attitude to autonomous vehicles. 30% of the public have some negative views and negative feelings towards autonomous vehicles. The interesting thing is that safety drives both of those views. So if you feel really positive about them, it's because you figure they'll be much safer in terms of our future, and if you've got concerns, it's about handing over control to computers. But as I often say to people, you know, when you're heading home tonight and tomorrow morning when you're driving to work, have a look around you and see what the humans are doing behind the wheels of the cars you go past. So sometimes that's salutary. The next observation, oops, we're going backwards. Sorry about that. The next observation is very powerful. I just want to reflect on this. So what the public is saying, 67% of the public are saying that they anticipate that fully autonomous vehicles will be commercially available and ready to go by 2025, 67%. And that leads up to 87% by 2030. But only 1 in 5 say they think we'll be ready for them, that the government, the regulatory, the policy, public policy considerations will be ready. But that's a really powerful thing, and I want you to remember that, because I'm really robust, and I think we the RAC are really robust about autonomous vehicles and how quickly they'll be introduced into the market. And for those of you who have a few wrinkles like me, you may remember, most of us should remember back to 2007, when smartphones were introduced into Australia. We weren't asking for smartphones, we didn't know about them, we weren't asking for them. Within 8 years, there were more smartphones in Australia than Australians. So you can imagine Now we have a population who not only are ready for them but understand them. So when they do arrive, what I'm suggesting is the uptake will be pretty significant. Next, please. This next chart is something which the Australian Driverless Vehicle Initiative produces, and it really shows the various steps of automation. The RAC IntelliBus is at level 4, which basically is that drivers no longer needed. You can take back control if needed, and the car will work fully autonomously. And the interesting thing about that high automation is really about where autonomous vehicles, we understand, to kick in. That's the expected time frame for their arrival. As Peter said earlier, about 2020, 2021, 2022 is when they'll be here. And the interesting thing is that coincides very closely, it's well aligned with what the public expect. So we're going to have the manufacturers supply a product, and we've got the pent-up interest amongst the population in terms of them. So that does suggest a fairly fast take-up when they arrive. These are our three key trial objectives, the RAC. Firstly, we wanted to understand the potential impact and the opportunities of autonomous vehicles. How do we safely transition them into the current transport network and the mix? And clearly the next couple of decades we have a combination of autonomous, semi-autonomous and existing vehicles will be a challenge. So that's what we really wanted to understand as well. The second one, and this is really important, we want to give West Australians the chance to kick the tyres, hop in the bus and give it a go. And so far we've had over 2,600 members of the West Australian community do that. And they've travelled in South Perth. And we have 7,000 people registered, and we haven't really been too publicly encouraged. We haven't really been out there promoting that too much. We did have a very big comms plan, a very big marketing plan when we launched the bus on the 31st of August. Within about 4 hours, we'd filled up 3 months' worth of trips, and they continue to grow, which is fantastic. But that was deliberate, and we've also had, I think, somewhere between 30 and 40 members of parliament, both federal, state and ministers from other jurisdictions, hop in the bus. And that's deliberate because when you touch and feel something, you get a greater appreciation about it's here, it's actually here now, and when you read stuff, you can sometimes reflect that might happen in the next 10 or 20 years. And the critical one there, which I'll just touch on, no need to go back with the slide, is what Peter said, we need a nationally coordinated approach to autonomous vehicles. Because I think the real challenge will be the public policy framework and the regulatory framework. This is the IntelliBus, RAC IntelliBus. Key features of it are the LiDAR system that Peter referenced, used for detecting and avoiding objects. It has stereo vision cameras, 6 LiDARs in all, GPS system, bounces off about 16 satellites. The normal mobile phone, I think, is about 3. Also has odometry within the wheels too to measure kilometres and metres to make sure it stays on track. So functioning, pretty tech. Interesting, the rate of change. We launched our shuttle bus 31st of August. There have been about 14 software upgrades since that time. And indeed, the whole bus has been improved in terms of its chassis, physical appearance, and we'll be getting a revised, updated one later this month with far superior air conditioning. There's one difference between the summers in France and the summers in Perth. So it's really a comfort thing, but it's pretty important. Thank you. The trial's currently operating in South Perth. The blue strip there it's about a circuit about 3.4 k's. So the bus is there Monday to Thursday and Saturdays, operating between 9:30 and 3 p.m. What we wanted to do was to have a semi-purposeful trial. So we looked at 23 locations in Perth, in different areas of Perth. I must say everyone was really receptive to this. I see Martin here from City of Perth. A lot of local governments were really keen to host it, which was fantastic. And we went through a whole series of parameters, and some of them were really basic, like road design. There's a low gap in the undercarriage, so sometimes if you've got high speed humps or what have you, just simply can't put them there. There's the road canopy, there are other considerations. But this is the first phase, that's currently in operation. The second phase is marked in orange, and there's a degree of difficulty and an increased complexity there, and we wanted to test the limits of the shuttle bus. And then the third phase, which is actually the yellow line, goes to the edge of the zoo, and then back down Men's Street. For those of you who know Men's Street, a little challenging there, cafe strip, pedestrians, etc. And we wanted to have a semi-purposeful trial. What do I mean by that? For example, you could catch the ferry, you could jump on the shuttle bus, you could go to the zoo, return, or in fact those medium to high density areas perhaps could be looked at that. And we chose an IntelliBus because we thought the first and last mile is probably a really good opportunity for autonomous vehicles in the short term. Link up people, get them from their residents in particular to faster travelling, high density public transport for things like ferries, rail, buses. So stage 3, it's operating in South Perth, and I'll show, in the interest of time, we'll show now a video. Oh, sorry, I missed this slide. Very important. A whole host of considerations in terms of our trial. We couldn't even import the bus into Australia without a special exemption, because the current regulations for vehicles dictate that the steering wheel has to be on the left-hand side. The shuttle bus has no steering wheel, and so right from day one we need an exemption. I think we've, so far, Anne, her team and others have got about 100 exemptions for the shuttle bus. And that's one of the risks with the existing trials in Australia, is that our trial's been great. We've had enormous support. In some ways people think it's a bit easy, but it's all by exemption. So you can give an exemption once, you can give an exemption 5 times, you can give an exemption maybe 100 times. You're not going to give them 5,000 times or 10,000 times or 100,000 times. So the regulatory and policy framework needs to be well ensured, as does all the safety issues. So all of these factors were key drivers, and there's comprehensive risk assessments, safety plans, etc., that sit behind this, cyber security, etc., in terms of the trial and what we learned from it. Thanks. And then this is a video of the bus currently in operation down at South Perth. So thank you, and a special thank you to about, in particular, the half of you in the room, because the RAC is privileged to have about 58% of all West Australian households that have members of the RAC, and you've contributed and helped fund the IntelliBus. So thank you to many of you in the room as well for being members of the RAC, but we're very proud and privileged to be able to do this on behalf of all West Australians. Thank you.